Hello, everyone, welcome to my channel. I hope everyone has having a wonderful day after watching these videos. Please hit the subscribe button and watching this video. Meri Brown has had a very long history of defending polygamy and for years has gone against accusations that people from her church only practice polygamy because it's what you're supposed to do to get into heaven. In fact, very famously, there was a back and forth that happened in season 6 when there was a panel between the Browns and former members of various polygamous sects, and Kristen Decker flat out asked Robyn whether or not they would practice polygamy if they didn't believe in the faith. Like, were they practicing polygamy because they believed that this was how they were going to get to heaven? They've pushed back against that claim numerous times, and even this past year on the last season, Meri pushed back this idea that the only reason that she stayed with Kody was because it was her path to get into heaven. But now it sounds like in a new interview, she's changed her tune, and she's actually opening up about whether or not she, 1, believes in polygamy, 2, whether or not she believes it's how she gets into heaven, and 3, why she married Kody in the first place. So this is kind of an interesting story, because I have been waiting for years for one of the wives to admit this. I have been waiting for years for them to say, you know what? We got married because we believed this was how we were going to get into heaven. Because everybody knows that the faith that they believe in tells them that they have to marry. A man has to marry so many wives so that he can get to the highest level of heaven, which is the celestial kingdom. A tenet of that faith, which I think is a complete cult, says that 3 women are the minimum a man needs in order for the man to get to the highest level of heaven. And once he gets to that highest level, you guys, he gets his own planet. And he gets his own solar system. I don't know if it's a planet, but he gets his own planet. And it's like he gets to populate the planet with all the little spirit babies, and his whole family's there. And they got to bring the spirit babies down and, bring them to his planet. And so got Kody's goal in life was to become a god. And he only could achieve that godliness through women. So Meri on the show, they would always say no. On the show, they would always say, no, we wanted to do this. This is what we wanted. We would have done this without the faith. But truthfully, it sounds like their disbelief and moving away from their faith is part of the reason they stopped practicing polygamy. And Meri finally said that when she was growing up, she was taught that you had to live this way in order to get to heaven. In an interview on a podcast with Rachel, you could tell I'm misunderstood. Check it out. Meri Brown was asked, but then, this is why I don't do threesomes or anything, that the jealousy, that the self-esteem issues that could creep in, I can't function like that. So Meri Brown says, it's definitely a thing. And like I said before, I thought that I was bad for having some of those emotions just because it's kind of what you're taught to believe, that you're not supposed to feel like this. This is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to, in order to get to heaven or whatever it is, you know what I mean? Like you're supposed to do this, which also means you're not supposed to have the emotions about it. Like bad if you're jealous, right? You know what I mean? Yeah, but it seems like human nature. It's human nature. It's normal. Yeah, and I won't stay on this. Remember in the earlier seasons when they were really robotic and they would talk about jealousy and they would be like, yes, we get jealous. Jealousy is a normal emotion, but we are able to overcome jealousy to become better people and more evolved or whatever they would say. And it was something that they would constantly talk about, like it's going to make us better people because that's what they're told in their church. And really what they're told in their church is that if you feel jealous, you're not supposed to feel jealous because this is what you're supposed to do. Like this is required by God for you to get into heaven. You don't get to get into heaven. You don't get to get the highest level of celestial kingdom, celestial honor, whatever, if you don't do plural marriage. Girls from the time they are born are bred and groomed to believe that their only path into heaven is through a man and only as a plural wife. So they are taught from an early age that having feelings is bad. Having a feeling of jealousy and not being able to cope with jealousy is bad. And women are taught that if they can't overcome those feelings, there's something wrong with them. Not that the practice is wrong, but there's something wrong with them. So imagine you spend your whole life in a cult that tells you that you're not supposed to be jealous, that your husband sleeps around and has kids with other women, and that you have to share him and he neglects you. He neglects your kids. He might not even show up. You hit menopause and he puts you out to pasture because the cult says they can't have sex after they have menopause. Like as long as if you're not breeding, if you're not making a baby, if you're not bringing a child down from the spirit world, and you're not bringing that spirit baby down to populate your husband's kingdom, then you're done. Like if you can't do that anymore, there's no need for you. And so the men have to constantly marry younger and younger and younger, which is why there are so many underage brides in these cults. Why they are always grooming girls and children and telling little girls, the only way that you're going to get into heaven is through celestial plural marriage. The only way that you'll achieve it is if your husband has 3 wives. So it's your duty, not only as a wife to have to share him, it's also your duty to help your husband find more wives. It's your duty to accept those wives. It is your duty. Your husband gets to do whatever you get to be there, and you're not allowed to have feelings about it. It's a twisted and sick practice designed by Joseph Smith in an effort to cover up his infidelity, in my opinion. And it's abusive to women. Meri is 53 years old, and she is just learning now that it was completely false, that the teachings she was taught were wrong. So imagine you're 53 and you're just learning that you are. It's okay to have feelings. It's okay to be jealous. It's okay not to accept certain behaviors from your husband. It's okay to want more in a relationship. And maybe now you'll understand why Kody always feels so emboldened to be such a jerk to the women. Because he is getting feedback from his church constantly that your wives are just supposed to deal with it. They're just supposed to go with it. They're not allowed to complain. And so when he's telling them, like, this is what you signed up for, you're not supposed to have opinions. You're supposed to be accepting of this. This is what we agreed to. That's directly from the church too. They're saying this is what you signed up for. A child that grows up around this. And Meri even talks about this in this podcast. She grew up with a family that was kicked out of the LDS church because her dad decided he wanted to have plural wives and practice polygamy. Her dad has multiple wives. He has kids outside of marriage. She doesn't call those moms mom. She's not close to those women. The first sibling she gets up from one of her dad's plural marriages is when she's 12 years old. And some of these women don't stay for very long, by the way. And she said that when she was a teenager, she almost considered leaving and not practicing polygamy because she wasn't sure that it was the right thing to do, because it was the way that she had grown up. She'd never been exposed to outside ideas. She didn't know that there was another way to live. She didn't realize that you could do marriage in a different way. It was just what was expected of her. And lo and behold, it was Kody, and Kody came around, and he's love bombing her to hell. And it almost sounds like the way that Meri describes Kody and her meeting. It's like Kody layered the attention on her because she was vulnerable. He wanted to be a polygamist. Kody needed to woo a girl to become his wife so he could get in, right? He blames Meri for this today, but I don't believe it for a second, because Meri describes herself as being very shy and Kody being very gregarious, and Kody being funny and happy all the time. Check it out. Meri Brown says, basically non-existent. Meri Brown was asked, "Ok, so it wasn't like you had some high school boyfriend." "Ok, so Kody was your first boyfriend?" Meri Brown says, "Yeah." "And was it a massive love affair? Was it like your first love?" Meri Brown says, "I mean, there was. I remember seeing all my friends dating and having all these guys like them. And nobody liked me, and I'm like, what's wrong with me? And there were a couple of guys that I kind of, liked and stuff. But obviously nothing ever happened with it. So when I met Kody, he was very interested in me." He says now, "Sorry, I just had to say that." No, he was very interested in me. It was fun. He talked a lot, right? He talked a lot. He was very jovial, very happy. He's smiling all the time, and I really, really enjoyed that. Compare Kody to Meri. Kody went to public school. Kody was a wrestling, state champion. Kody had girlfriends in high school. Kody went on a mission and lived away from his family for 2 years. Kody had experience in the regular world, in the outside world. Kody was, for all intents and purposes, raised in the mainstream as an LDS kid. Now, yes, he was still in the LDS, but he had experience in the real world. He was way more experienced with women, with society, what was right, what was wrong. He knew all of that. And when he meets Meri, who's grown up in a cult, never went to public school, starts working at age 16. I don't even know at this point how she graduates. She does have college credits now, but I don't know how they did school for graduation. And she's never had a boyfriend. She's never really had guys interested in her. She's always been very shy. Someone that always helped with her parents, helped with the younger siblings, was very obedient to her parents, and Kody love-bombed her, Meri. I've spoken to people who knew her as a kid, and she was a rules follower. She definitely, people that know her said that she was very much about making sure other people followed the rules of the church, making sure at school to point out who's not wearing the right attire, that kind of thing. So she was always striving to be the best child with, the best faithful child doing her due diligence. Kody finds a girl that's very devout, very brainwashed and shy, and he's over the top. So he's already a member and he wants to get his. He said it was his ego-driven. He said it was ego-driven when he was that age. He wanted the number of wives. He didn't care how many it was. He just love-bombed them to hell, and he picked them all up. And it kind of matches what she says here. So Kody is love-bombing her. But she also goes on to say that there was a period right before meeting Kody that she actually questioned things. Oh, he was all in. No, he was all in. He was a member of that church community as well. And it was a conversation that he and I had that we would continue this. I had a time in, during my teenage years, and I was like, it's really, really what I want to do for sure. I had to really consider it. Because, when you're born into this family and you believe what your parents teach you just because that's all you know. And so, it was normal to me. I grew up with multiple moms, multiple siblings, and this was normal to do that. Kody didn't grow up that way, but he, converted. Meri Brown was asked and was into it. It wasn't like you were forcing him to do anything. Meri Brown says, oh no, Meri Brown was asked. And you were not forcing him to marry you or manipulating him. Meri Brown says, no. Meri Brown was asked. As you may have said later on, Meri Brown says, no. So Meri says that she questioned whether or not she wanted to do polygamy before meeting Kody. And I don't know if you recall, but early on in the very early seasons, Meri had said that she loved Kody so much that she was willing to do polygamy for him. Which I always thought was weird, right? She'd always say, we made this decision together. But it almost sounds like she wasn't really on track. She was kind of thinking about leaving the cult, doing her own thing. Kody comes in, and is it a convert? Love bombs her, gets her interested, and then she's sucked back in, right? And that game of getting sucked back in has constantly been in her life for all the time that she was with Kody. If she'd want to leave and want to do something for herself, they would try to suck her back in. They would try to remind her that she shouldn't want to leave. You had all these other kids. She didn't just have one child. It wasn't just the fam. It wasn't just Kody she wanted. It was the family. But think of it from Meri's perspective. And listen again, I'm not Meri's fan. I am not a Meri fan. But I think it's important when we talk about polygamy and we think about the subjugation aspect of women. Putting them in a submissive role, not allowing them to have a voice, forcing them to deal with things that they shouldn't have to deal with, telling them to stuff down their emotions. Think of Meri. She's first wife. Kody love bombs her and makes her feel super special. She believes that they're gonna have she has this amazing life. And she's led to believe that she'll be able to have this amazing experience with the other sister wives. And then Kody brings in women that she can't get along with. He slides in Janelle, who is her brother's ex-wife. Christine and her get along for a period of time, but frankly, Christine and Meri's personalities are very similar. Christine might be more outspoken than Meri. She might be more, goofy than Meri. They're both very opinionated. They're both very alpha. And so Christine and Meri, long-term, were never gonna work. You can't have, two alpha women. They usually, end up colliding. So with Meri and Christine, they're just both way too strong in their convictions, their opinions, and that's not a bad thing. There's just no bend. They both believe they're entitled. They both believe they're right, and they're justified in their rightness. Then he slides over to Robyn, who's a friend with Meri, and brings her in. So Meri finally thinks that she's gonna have that friendship, only to come to find out that once Robyn comes in, Kody's bored with polygamy, and he's got his trophy wife that he always wanted. And I say that because that's how he and the wives referred to Robyn in the beginning. They called her the trophy wife. He said that Robyn was the represented everything that he had ever strived for. She was his supermodel. That's his words. She wasn't a supermodel. And so once he got that, he felt like he was on top of the world, and he threw everything else away. And then Robyn gave him whatever it was he wanted, the supply he needed, the validation he wanted and craved, the adoration, the sex, all of it. And Meri never gets that relationship with the women. So her whole life she's lied to that if she stays in this marriage, she'll go to heaven only to get to the end of her marriage for Kody to say, I don't believe in these vows being eternal. I don't believe in eternal vows. I think they can be broken based on behavior, based on merit. So he's trying to take away her eternity, and he's changing the rules. So in a lot of ways, she was conned the longest and the most. Abused in the respect of Kody constantly stringing her along. I have a lot of empathy for her. That doesn't change the way that she treats people. It doesn't change the way she may have treated kids. It gives me better perspective of her because we have to remember that every single one of these women are victims. Victims to the culture, victims of subjugation, victims of oppression. And so Meri could have had such a different life had she not met Kody and had she not been willing to go the polygamy route just so she could be with him because he was the first guy that was really interested in her. Imagine if someone would have been interested in her that wasn't a megalomaniac and a narcissist. Her life could have been very different. She says she has no regrets, but she also said she would never live in polygamy again. She would only ever want to be married to one man, and she will never, ever, ever be in a plural family, meaning she's done with this faith. What does that tell you? Is polygamy workable? She says that it could still work, although I don't know that it can work in the context where subjugation is happening. And it's under the context of patriarchy. It'll never work in that context. Alright, you guys, that's my opinion. What's yours? Tell me in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed, and click on the bell so you never miss a video. Bye guys.